Crisis at the Pentagon. Secretary Pete Hegseth under fire amid leaks, internal turmoil, and foreign policy pressures. The U.S. Department of Defense is currently embroiled in a mounting crisis under the leadership of Secretary Pete Hegseth. Since his controversial appointment, the department has been plagued by allegations of misconduct, unauthorized disclosures of classified information, and an exodus of senior personnel. As the Pentagon grapples with internal discord, it also finds itself navigating complex foreign policy challenges, particularly surrounding the ongoing war in Ukraine. The convergence of these issues has left the nation's defense leadership in a state of unprecedented upheaval. Leaked intelligence via Signal raises alarms. At the heart of the controversy is a series of alleged leaks involving Secretary Hegseth himself. According to multiple sources within the Department of Defense, Hegseth used the encrypted messaging app Signal to disseminate highly sensitive military information. Among the most alarming revelations was the alleged sharing of classified plans for an airstrike targeting Houthi rebel forces in Yemen. These plans, reportedly extracted from a top-secret military communications platform, were shared in a group chat that included non-government individuals, his wife, brother, and personal attorney. While Signal is often praised for its end-to-end encryption and security, the very act of transmitting classified military data on an unofficial channel, especially to civilians, represents a grave breach of protocol. Military legal experts have pointed out that even if the intent was not malicious, the disclosure of such information could potentially jeopardize active operations and the safety of U.S. personnel deployed in the Middle East. Secretary Hegseth has publicly denied the accusations, insisting that the messages were informal in nature and that no classified information was shared. In a statement to PBS, and later reiterated in an NPR interview, he described the group chat as a private discussion about geopolitical concerns, claiming the content was not derived from any classified briefing. However, experts from Newsweek and The Guardian disagree. They argue that even a casual mention of military action plans, especially when sourced from secure channels, constitutes an unauthorized release of classified material. The threshold for what counts as classified is not based on personal judgment, said former intelligence officer Rachel Dunning. If it came from a secure source, it stays classified, period. This incident has triggered internal investigations within both the Department of Defense and the Office of the Inspector General. Legal analysts suggest that if the allegations are substantiated, Secretary Hegseth could face disciplinary action ranging from administrative penalties to criminal prosecution, depending on intent and the sensitivity of the information shared. Exodus of top advisors reveals deepening internal fractures. Beyond the leaks, Hegseth's tenure has been marred by growing instability within the Pentagon's leadership structure. In recent weeks, at least 4 high-ranking officials, including deputy secretaries and senior policy aides, have either resigned or been abruptly dismissed. Multiple sources report that 2 of those individuals were escorted out of the Pentagon by security staff, a move generally reserved for personnel deemed to pose an immediate risk to operations or who have violated critical policies. These dramatic exits appear to be the result of escalating internal power struggles, particularly surrounding Hegseth's chief of staff, Joe Casper. Known for his combative style and staunch loyalty to Hegseth, Casper has reportedly clashed with other senior officials over policy decisions and access to the secretary. Politico reports describe a working environment fraught with paranoia, factionalism, and backroom maneuvering. One former aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the situation as toxic and unsustainable. According to The Atlantic, morale within the department has hit a new low, with many career civil servants expressing fear that long-standing institutional norms are being eroded in favor of short-term political loyalty. John Ulliott, a former Pentagon spokesperson, went so far as to call the current climate a full-blown meltdown, suggesting that the chain of command has effectively broken down in several key departments. We're seeing the kind of chaos that could delay crucial decision-making and compromise readiness, he said, mounting political pressure and bipartisan calls for resignation. Amid these cascading scandals, Secretary Hegseth is facing intensifying political pressure from both sides of the aisle. Prominent lawmakers from the Senate Armed Services Committee have publicly questioned his judgment and fitness to lead the nation's military apparatus. Several Democratic leaders have called for his immediate resignation, citing the alleged leaks and deteriorating morale within the Pentagon as evidence of gross mismanagement. Surprisingly, some Republican senators have echoed these sentiments, arguing that Hegseth's leadership has become a liability to national security. We cannot afford a defense secretary whose actions raise doubts about the integrity and confidentiality of our operations, said one GOP senator, speaking to reporters anonymously. Despite these calls, President Trump has so far stood by his appointee, issuing a statement expressing full confidence in Hegseth's leadership. Nonetheless, insiders suggest that behind closed doors, discussions are already underway about potential successors. According to sources familiar with the matter, the White House is weighing the political cost of sticking with a controversial figure versus the necessity of restoring confidence in the Department of Defense. Foreign policy at a crossroads, Ukraine peace talks loom. While the Pentagon reels from internal instability, the United States is simultaneously playing a central role in international negotiations aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. This week, senior officials from the US, Ukraine, and the European Union are scheduled to convene in London to explore the contours of a possible peace agreement with Russia. Leaked drafts of the proposal have sparked heated debate across diplomatic and defense circles. The framework reportedly includes recognition of Russian sovereignty over Crimea, a position long opposed by both Ukrainian leadership and much of the international community. Additionally, the draft outlines significant restrictions on Ukraine's future involvement in NATO, raising concerns about long-term regional security. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed cautious willingness to engage in talks but remains adamant that any serious negotiation must begin with a full Russian ceasefire and withdrawal from newly occupied territories. "We are ready for dialogue," he said at a recent press conference, "but not at the cost of our sovereignty or territorial integrity." The outcome of these talks could profoundly reshape the global security environment and test the credibility of the United States as a stabilizing force. With Secretary Hegseth's leadership under siege and the Pentagon's decision-making apparatus reportedly in disarray, questions have emerged about whether the U.S. defense establishment is in a position to navigate such a delicate moment in world affairs. Implications for U.S. national security and global standing. The confluence of domestic dysfunction and critical foreign policy engagement presents a dual threat to U.S. national security. At home, the Department of Defense risks further deterioration in morale, cohesion, and strategic focus. Abroad, the credibility of American commitments, particularly to allies in NATO and Eastern Europe, is being closely scrutinized. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander James Stavridis warned in a recent CNN interview that the U.S. cannot afford mixed signals at a time when authoritarian regimes are testing the limits of Western resolve. He added that the integrity and effectiveness of the Department of Defense are not merely internal matters, they have global repercussions. Moving forward, the Biden administration may face increasing pressure to demonstrate accountability, either by reaffirming Hegseth's leadership through decisive reforms or by initiating a leadership change. Either way, the days ahead will be critical in determining the Pentagon's future trajectory and the U.S. role in shaping a stable, rules-based international order.